I'm just going to give you a brief rundown of the Progressive era monopolies and kind of what's going on with them here. Just a real quick rundown. Remember our Progressive era presidents, Theodore Roosevelt, William Howard Taft, and Woodrow Wilson here. Theodore Roosevelt actually comes up with this idea called New Nationalism in 1912 when he's running for, he'd already been president since poor McKinley gets assassinated real early on in 1901, I believe it was, and then he wins his election in 1904. Taft becomes president in 1908. He gets upset with Taft, and he runs for president again in 1912 against Taft and Wilson. This is the 1912 election that Wilson wins. But he actually coins this term New Nationalism. I actually wrote it up there because it actually really, in terms of how he's handling these big businesses, it really represents quite a bit of how he actually handled himself, I think, during his presidency. New Nationalism, he talks about having a strong central government that's active, a strong central government that's active, that defends the people, that is out there doing what's right and protecting and looking after the people, making business fair, making competition fair, which is a cornerstone of capitalism, which is competition. And you can kind of see this strong, active central government. For example, in the United Mine Workers, out in Pennsylvania and West Virginia, you got these coal miners on strike, and without consulting Congress, he threatens the management and the workers. I'll send the army, and the army will take possession and work the mines. So you guys better come to an agreement. And then the management ended up giving the workers, meeting them in the middle, giving them a little more pay, a little bit less working conditions, and so forth. And Democrats were upset. Can the president really do that? And threatened to take control of a privately owned company. And the Republicans were upset. He didn't even consult us, but the public loved it. And that kind of represents a strong central government. The action, the quick. The government being there is almost like a referee in some respects. What are some things that Teddy did? Here's a few of them that relate to monopolies and big business during this era. The Sherman Antitrust Act, which was actually created way back in 1890 under the President Benjamin Harrison. However, it hadn't really been used. It didn't really have the teeth. And Teddy Roosevelt's really going to be the first president who starts using this effectively to go after trusts. And the first one he breaks up is the Northern Securities Railroad Company. And the Supreme Court's going to end up agreeing with him. And this gets broken up into smaller companies. And then Theodore Roosevelt goes after quite a few more companies that are too big or being unfair. And he's known as the trust buster. He's going around breaking up trusts and things like that. And since he's really the first president to do this, that's his moniker. Even though you could argue later presidents, like the very next one, William Howard Taft, actually broke up more monopolies and trusts in less time. Teddy Roosevelt is forever going to be thought of as that trust buster because he's really the initial president to do so. We look here. We have the Elkins Act, which creates penalties for rebates. A lot of the railroad companies, to guarantee their business, in particular oil companies, Rockefeller was one of them, they would give rebates to these big companies like oil companies and stuff if they guaranteed to continue using their trains. A lot of people saw this as unfair practice to the smaller oil companies or smaller companies who weren't getting these rebates, as unfair, kind of hurting competition. So the Elkins Act would penalize railroads for issuing rebates to these bigger companies. It's unfair to the middle and smaller companies. The Hepburn Act, which is very, very, very big. The ICC, which had previously been created, could basically control railroad rates because of that going across state lines. And there was a lot of collusion back then. If there's a certain area and there's only two railroads that went through the area, they very well oftentimes colluded. Instead of competing and having lower prices for shipping more bulk, fair competition, a lot of these railroads would talk and collude and say, well, let's both charge the same high rates and not compete. And so the Hepburn Act tries to get around that by studying the books and saying that the government, the ICC, the Interstate Commerce Commission, can step in with the Hepburn Act and set rates. And In the Meat Inspection Act, which, believe it or not, actually the big companies liked and wanted, because they figured that, we can afford to run a cleaner, a cleaner place, and a lot of the smaller middle-sized companies can't, and it might actually give us an advantage. With the famous Meat Inspection Act, Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, and tainted meat getting sold to the U.S. Army for soldiers in the Spanish-American War down in Cuba helped spur this forward. In a separate act, the Pure Food and Drug Act, both in the year 1906, the Meat Inspection Act and the Pure Food and Drug Act, regulate medicine, food, the meat packing industry there, make it safer, creates the FDA. The FDA is still around today helping us out. So these are some of the things that Teddy had, a very active national government, central government, kind of being active, being the referee. William Howard Taft, Teddy's handpicked successor. They eventually are going to have a falling out, and then they patch it up right before Teddy dies. But Taft actually breaks up more trusts than Teddy in less time, because Teddy's president for roughly 7 years. Taft is president for 4 years. And he goes after Rockefeller's Standard Oil. He goes after what had been Carnegie's U.S. Steel. Teddy's actually furious because he had helped U.S. Steel in the past and didn't think that Taft was being fair in going after U.S. Steel. But Taft continues the government's role of creating competition by breaking up unfair monopolies and so forth. Woodrow Wilson, New Freedom. We have New Freedom. Basically, Woodrow Wilson, Southern Democrat, talks a little bit about states' rights, and he talks about having less of a national government role, and then more just kind of focusing more on fair competition. And he thinks that if you kind of can regulate the businesses from becoming too big, that you'll just have these self-regulating small and middle-sized businesses working it out. Eventually, he's going to head more towards like Teddy and kind of abandon his campaign pledge here. And you're going to see him create like the Clinton Antitrust Act here, which gives more teeth to the Sherman Antitrust Act, gives more teeth to the government to go after big companies or companies that are doing unfair business practices. Basically, the FTC, this is going to basically go after companies using unfair business practices. The government can go in and regulate that. And last but not least, the Keating-Owen Act. However, it's going to ban child labor, but a lot of the businesses want it. They can pay the kids less. It's not going to be happy. It's actually going to die. And so the Supreme Court is going to basically find this unconstitutional. But don't feel too sad here, because later on, a future president from then, FDR, will go ahead and get child labor banned. But the Keating-Owen Act is only temporary from 1960 to 1918, and it's trying to ban child labor. A lot of the big businesses like the kids, their little hands could fit between the moving parts to unclog things, and you could pay them less. But here's just a quick, brief kind of like summary of some of the things that, and I left a few things off for time's sake here. Here's just a few things that these progressive era presidents are doing in terms of regulating business, doing something that really hadn't been done much before. And then the following presidents, Harding, Coolidge, and Hoover are going to kind of back off a bit. Harding runs for president saying a return to normalcy, get rid of some of this progressive era. And those presidents, especially Harding and Coolidge, are more known for the laissez-faire, Hoover, the rugged individualism, kind of the government keeping its hands off the economy. That's what laissez-faire means. All right, well, thank you. I hope you enjoyed it, even though it was really quick and didn't offer a lot of details, but I've also been told that kids want the videos to be a little bit shorter, so there's hopefully one that's maybe shorter, I don't know.